Imagine stepping off a quiet country road into an entire village that hasn't changed since the 1800s. Not a replica, not a theme park. Real buildings, homes, workshops, churches, and farms plucked from the Genesee Valley and reassembled, one salvaged timber and hand-cut stone at a time, into a place where the past actually breathes. At Genesee Country Village and Museum in Mumford, New York, 68 historic structures line the lanes of a recreated 19th century hamlet, and inside each one, someone in period dress is doing exactly what the original occupant would have done: forging iron, throwing pottery, baking bread from scratch, or keeping the accounts of a small frontier enterprise. It's the largest living history museum in all of New York State, and on a warm afternoon, with the smell of wood smoke in the air and the sound of a blacksmith's hammer carrying across the green, the distance between now and then nearly disappears. Welcome to Walking Tour of New York, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in New York with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from the streets of Manhattan, the Brooklyn waterfront, and the energy of Times Square to the Adirondack High Peaks, Finger Lakes wine country, Niagara Falls, the Hudson Valley, and hidden gems tucked away in small towns across this extraordinary place. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore New York. You're in western New York now, tucked into the quiet hamlet of Mumford in Monroe County, about 20 miles southwest of Rochester and roughly halfway between that city and Buffalo. The Genesee Valley spreads out around you, rolling farmland and second-growth forest, old stone fences tracing the hedgerows, the land looking both settled and somehow untamed all at once. This is the country that was carved out of the wilderness in the decades after the American Revolution, when land speculators and their maps gave way to actual families with ox teams, axes, and a determination to build something permanent. Genesee Country Village and Museum exist to tell that story, not through artifacts behind glass, but through the buildings themselves and through the people who fill them. The museum covers more than 600 acres in all, and at its heart is the historic village. 68 restored and fully furnished structures arranged along the lanes of a 19th century hamlet. They weren't built here. Every one of them was found somewhere else in the Genesee region, already sagging, already forgotten, already on its way to becoming timber and rubble. The man who rescued them was John Jack Wehle, the son of Louis Wehle, who founded the Genesee Brewing Company. Jack Wehle had spent his life surrounded by collections, and in the mid-1960s, he realized that an entire art form was vanishing from the landscape, the work of the carpenters and housewrights and master builders who had shaped this valley's character. He began acquiring structures in 1966. For a decade, a corps of carpenters and masons worked alongside architectural historian Stuart Bolger to move the buildings here, restore them, and furnish them with period-appropriate artifacts. The museum first opened its doors to the public in 1976, and it has been growing ever since. As you make your way from the main entrance toward the historic village, it helps to know that the village is organized chronologically. 3 eras laid out so that walking deeper into the grounds means walking deeper into the century. The first section you encounter represents the early settlement period, roughly 1790 to 1820, the years when this region was still raw frontier. The structures here are simple and honest. A log pioneer cabin sits close to the earth, its interior dim and practical, every object serving a direct function. There are no luxuries, no ornament. The family that once occupied a place like this was growing its own food, spinning its own cloth, building its own tools. A costumed interpreter inside might be tending a fire, grinding corn, or explaining what it actually cost, in labor and time, to clear an acre of Genesee Valley hardwoods. There's a humbleness to these early buildings that's easy to underestimate when you walk past them. Pause here a moment before moving on. The story they tell is the foundation for everything that follows. From the pioneer section, the path opens into the center village, representing the period from about 1830 to 1870. And the transformation is striking. The frontier has become a community. The architecture grows more confident: federal-style homes with symmetrical facades, a general store, a printing office, a one-room schoolhouse, a church, a doctor's office, a tavern. The trades that sustained 19th century rural life are all here and all active. The blacksmith shop is one of the highlights of the entire museum, and it earns that reputation not through display cases, but through sound and heat, and the actual work being done inside. The smith works the forge and the anvil, shaping iron into tools, hardware, and horseshoes, using the same techniques that would have been used here 160 years ago. You can feel the heat from the doorway. The cooper, the barrel maker, is equally compelling, demonstrating a craft so fundamental to the 1800s that almost nothing could be stored or shipped without it. Over in the pottery, clay becomes vessel. In the weaving room, fiber becomes cloth. Spread throughout the village are 13 heirloom gardens, each planted with period-appropriate species. The kitchen gardens supply the village interpreters with herbs and produce for the historic cooking demonstrations that happen throughout the day. In early springs, when the sap is running, the Maple History Trail invites visitors to watch both traditional and modern methods of maple syrup production side by side, a quiet reminder that some of what felt new in the 19th century was itself an adaptation of much older indigenous knowledge. Two particular structures in the center village deserve a close look. One is the boyhood home of George Eastman. Yes, the George Eastman who would go on to found Kodak and reshape how the world captures images. It was moved here from Rochester, and seeing it in this setting places his origins firmly in their context. A modest, respectable middle-class home in a mid-century Genesee Valley village, not so different from dozens of other homes around it. The other is the home of Nathaniel Rochester himself, one of the founders of the city that bears his name. Another reminder of how much of what shaped the region flowed through the Genesee country. From the center village, the path continues into the Gaslight District, covering the period from roughly 1850 to 1900. The architecture here reflects the prosperity that the later 19th century brought to Western New York: ornate Victorian houses with bay windows and decorative trim, an opera house, more substantial commercial buildings. The Davis Opera House is worth stepping into even if there's nothing scheduled. The buildings in this section remind you that Mumford and its neighbors were not backwaters. They were part of a thriving regional economy, connected by rail and road to Rochester and beyond. Near the edge of the Gaslight District, don't miss the Civil War observation balloon, a full-scale replica of the Intrepid, one of the balloons used to gather intelligence for Union forces during the war. It's the kind of unexpected detail that makes Genesee Country Village feel like a place where genuine history keeps surfacing in unexpected places. Before you leave the historic village proper, make a stop at Silver Baseball Park, the first replica 19th century baseball park in America, built on the museum grounds in 2001. The park hosts vintage baseball games played by 1868 rules, which means no gloves, underhand pitching, and a healthy degree of umpire discretion. An annual tournament in August draws teams from across the country, and watching a game here surrounded by the museum's historic buildings is one of the stranger and more genuinely delightful experiences available in all of Western New York. When you've spent some time in the historic village, make your way to the John L. Wehle Gallery, which sits near the entrance to the museum grounds and offers a very different kind of experience, one that's fully climate-controlled and welcome on a warm afternoon. The gallery houses Jack Wheel's personal collection of wildlife and sporting art, covering 4 centuries of work by artists including John James Audubon, Frederick Remington, Carl Rungius, and Robert Bateman. The paintings and sculptures trace a long arc in how Americans and Europeans have understood and depicted the relationship between human beings and the natural world, from the confident dominion of the early hunting portraits to the more ambivalent naturalism of the 20th century. The gallery also holds the Bruce and Susan Green costume collection, more than 3,500 historical clothing items representing men, women, and children across the decades of the 19th century. For anyone interested in material culture, this collection alone is worth the visit. Outside the gallery, a sculpture garden carries the collection into the open air, with bronze animals arranged among the trees in a way that feels more like a discovered clearing than an installed exhibit. Just beyond the gallery complex sits the Carriage Museum, which houses a remarkable collection of horse-drawn vehicles from the 19th and early 20th centuries, from basic utility wagons to elegant sporting rigs to pleasure carts and sleighs. The showpiece of the collection is the 12-horse hitch wagon that once belonged to the Genesee Brewing Company, Jack Whaley's family business. It's a spectacular object, the kind of thing that makes you recalibrate your sense of what 19th century commerce and pageantry actually looked like. When you're ready for a break, the museum has several options. The Depot restaurant, positioned near the Great Meadow, is the main full-service dining option. The grill typically runs until mid-afternoon, with lighter fare available through closing. The Freight House Pub, an open-air spot overlooking the meadow, pours housecraft beers brewed by Rohrbach Brewing Company. Look for the Fat Ox Ale and the Stocking Hill Ale, both developed specifically for the museum and meant to evoke the brewing traditions of the 19th century Genesee Valley. The Pavilion Garden Restaurant, open in the heart of summer, adds ice cream, milkshakes, and grab-and-go options amid the heirloom gardens, and the D.B. Munger Confectionery inside the village offers house-made treats, including baked goods and seasonal sweets prepared by a costumed interpreter. If the weather is good, the museum actively encourages visitors to bring their own lunches and find a spot on the grounds. The Great Meadow in particular, with its broad expanse and views of the surrounding village, is one of the more quietly pleasant picnic settings in all of Western New York. After lunch or as a palate cleanser between the historic village and the galleries, the Genesee Country Nature Center offers 5 miles of marked trails across 175 acres of woodland, old fields, and meadow. The trails are well-maintained and genuinely peaceful, with the added benefit of placing you on the same landscape the museum's early settlers would have encountered. Keep an eye out along the Maple History Trail in the shoulder seasons. The maple canopy here is old and substantial, and the trail reads as both a natural and historical document at once. A word on timing: Genesee Country Village and Museum is open for regular daily admission from roughly May through October, Wednesday through Sunday during the season's shoulder months, and Tuesday through Sunday at peak. The winter months see the grounds largely closed except for special events, notably the holiday programming, which brings the village to life in a different but equally atmospheric way. Summer weekends are busy and worth arriving early. The museum is large enough that you genuinely cannot see everything in one visit. Most visitors with a real interest in the material spend a full day and still leave wishing for more. There is no single other place in New York State where you can walk through an entire 19th century village and understand, not just intellectually, but physically, what daily life in this region actually required. The buildings have weight and smell and temperature. The trades being demonstrated are real trades, performed with real skill. The history here didn't end, it got relocated to Mumford and kept going. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring New York. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond New York, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.